All right, we're going to jump gears. A friend of mine and got a heads up par. Robert Travis Scott joins us. Robert, how you doing, bud?
Hey, good morning. Beautiful day in Louisiana from what I can see.
I'm telling you, man, great to be alive. It's great to get you back on the program again. I appreciate you taking a few minutes. A lot of people requesting, talking about the amendments. So I want to go over all amendments with you. But one thing I want to do y'all have the amendments on your website telling people what the amendments do if you vote for or against?
That's right. And it's, the organization is the Public Affairs Research Council, but we're just known as PAR, P-A-R. So if you look up parlouisiana.org, O-R-G, PAR Louisiana, you'll see our website, and we've got our guide to the constitutional amendments, and we'll tell you, if you just want a real quick hit, you can just read the top of each one and see what a vote for or against would do. But if you want to go deep and you got questions about it, we got all kinds of information in there so you can dig in and figure it out for yourself.
Okay, do y'all, before we get to them, do y'all take a stance anyway, or y'all just lay it out there and let people decide for themselves?
Well, Moon, what we say here is PAR takes no position on these ridiculous constitutional amendments.
Yeah, man, we've had enough of them.
But the truth is, we just try to help you decide seriously. So.
Okay, and I think that's important, and that's why I called you to get you on. I had a lot of people request. So if somebody wants to read them, parla.org, correct?
parlouisiana.org. .org. Yep.
Okay, Parlo. I make sure I put L.A., but I'm going to spell it out just so I have it in front of me. When somebody asks, I can send them to you. All right, let's start off with amendment number 1. And by the way, there's 6 amendments on the ballot in November. How many in December?
None.
So this is
thank
it.
goodness,
this is it.
Because that would have cost a lot of extra money to probably run a statewide ballot, which we probably didn't need. So it's good to keep those things on the statewide ballot, and be prepared before you go in there. You don't want to go in that voting booth and see these propositions for the first time.
No, by the way, I think I was thinking about the taxes in Lafayette. Brandon, don't we have taxes on both November and December?
I think December for sure. I don't know about November.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Let's go. Amendment 1, and you don't have to go into mega detail. I'll Q&A with you. What does it do, for and against, and talk about it?
Well, what this would do is if someone is convicted of a felony, they'd have to wait until 5 years after the completion of their sentence before they could run for public office or even be appointed to a position of honor or trust in the state. So basically, it just says felons, you can't get right back in and run for office right after you get out of jail is basically what this means. And we used to have this. We had it at constitutional amendment that passed in 1998. For 15 years, you were prevented from doing it, but the Supreme Court overturned that because the legislature kind of screwed up the way they wrote it. So that's where we are with that one, and it's just a question of whether you think you want your convicted felons to wait 5 years.
So right now, a convicted felon comes out of jail, whatever, they can run for office.
That's right, and there's an existing law that says, if you're in office and you're convicted of a felony, you're out, right? So this, if you have had a past felony, you want to run for office, you're open to go ahead and run right now.
Yeah.
As long as you've finished your term of imprisonment, which could mean probation and imprisonment.
And we've seen people run and win too, so it's interesting, but that is Amendment 1. So if you vote against it, basically somebody coming out, their time, they can run for office. If you vote for it, they got to wait 5 years. Is it that simple?
That's basically it.
Okay. Now, the other one is the one that's probably, I'm going to say, Amendment 2, unanimous verdict for all felony cases. This is the one that there's actually been some organization, money spent, people getting out there. Tell us about Amendment 2.
The Amendment 2, is an actually significant amendment, very meaningful, and it is an issue that should be taken up one way or another in the Constitution. Unlike so many inconsequential amendments that we deal with that are just dealing on the margins, this is actually talking about fundamental law And it's very, very important. So this one, number 2, is probably one of the most important amendments that I've seen in 2 decades.
Okay.
And looking at what we do. But basically what it says is that in felony cases where you have to serve hard labor, right, you have to have a unanimous jury, whereas now it's 10 out of 12 that would have that you need for either an acquittal or a conviction. Now, capital murder cases, like if you're up for something where you have killed someone and you're up for the death penalty, that's already a unanimous jury that's required. And in some of these lesser felonies, you have a 6-person jury, and a unanimous jury is already required. It's these felonies in between where you'd be subject to confinement or hard labor. Might be armed robbery, for example, second-degree murder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Those are the ones that right now require only 10 out of the 12. And under this constitutional amendment, it would be unanimous. And we're the only state, except for Oregon, that does not require unanimous verdict in felony cases. So the federal courts require it also. So we are a little bit on an island on this one. And I think that's one of the reasons that this has attracted so much attention, both from conservative and liberal groups.
Yeah, they're both out trying to get this done. I guess the only side against it is they were concerned in Louisiana that, and I'm just telling you what I hear, that some people are concerned about it, is getting convictions on people that really did something, but powerful people can always get 1 or 2 jurors to go in the wrong direction. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just telling you what's out there. But that's right. I mean, the argument against it is that the current law is just more efficient. Yeah.
And whereas sort of generally speaking, the district attorneys have come out in favor of this constitutional amendment. There are probably some DAs out there who have had some hesitation about it and don't care for it. And the U.S. Supreme Court has taken up this type of question before, and it has said that, yeah, you can have non-unanimous jury verdicts in the United States. So those would be some of the arguments against voting for it. But I think some of the arguments in favor have been mostly, look, I mean, there's been no question that this is, when you do the numbers, that this has had a disparate impact on minorities. Yeah.
Well, I think that what you look at, too, though, is, and I've said this all the time about taxes, and I'll say it about amendments, that if you don't have paid for, organized support for or against the amendment, Stelly bill was a great one. There was nobody against it but me. That organization to get it passed, and it ended up passing. This is the same thing. There's no organization out there, you know what I'm saying, that is going against this particular amendment and this particular law. So, and I'm not asking you to comment on this. I think it passed just because of that. I know people that are against it, but it just seems like a no-brainer with most people, so that's why you don't hear from them. You know, people running for office and things of that nature. You do, too. You probably know people that are against this changing. I'm not against it. I'm just giving you thoughts from talking to people.
No, I think that, you know, it seems like a lot of people I've talked to are, you know, in favor of seeing this pass, if for no other reason, just to say it sort of stops the gamesmanship by prosecutors. And like one of the state senators who was formerly in a prosecution office, you know, stood up and gave quite a good speech when this was being considered and said, look, you know, we've gamed the system with this 10 to 12. You know, we would sort of change what we would do. We would actually take a lesser felony and try to make it something worse. Mm-hmm. You know, just so we could get a non-unanimous jury in front of us instead of a 6-member jury. And he said, this is a distortion and that needs to end. That's not the best kind of system to have. And that was one of the reasons I think a lot of people, sort of knew the gamesmanship that was going on the prosecution side, and that this was just too tempting a system to try to steer things that way.
Yeah. Well, I just, between you and me, I don't see how they'll beat this back. I think we'll have this as soon as the vote's over. But once again, you're not here to tell us what to vote or how to vote.
You never know.
That.
You never know, man. I really don't know. I don't try to predict how these things will come out. I mean, you mentioned Stelly, way back when, and you said there was nobody against it. And that was true in an organized campaign sense, right? There was no. It was 49% of the people
voted against it.
Voted against it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is it was 51-49, and back in that vote, Mike Foster was the governor. Republican Renewal was running the party. Republican Women was doing fundraisers. Mike Foster was the one that helped pushed it. So all the side that I think should have been against it didn't. And matter of fact, a comment from Lobby was, we're not going to get involved. We don't think this could pass. And it passed. And that's why it passed. Had you had any money out there saying this was bad, it would have failed. So you are correct, but this is kind of a flip of that. This looks really good just because there's no organized opposition. I will agree with you. We don't know to the vote. I think you're correct. Let's do this, Robert. I know we went through two. I knew the first two would be like that. Let's go ahead and take a break. We'll come back and try to squeeze these other four in.
We can squeeze these others in quick.
Yeah, I knew you could, but these two were the ones I thought we'd spend a little bit more time on.
Yeah.
All right, Robert Travis Scott, our good friends of PARLouisiana.org, and you can find out for and against what your vote does on these amendments, PARLouisiana.org. You can find out for yourself on what way you want to vote. They're not taking sides. They're just telling you what happens if you vote for or against. We'll take a break. More with Robert Travis Scott on the other four amendments when we get back. Hi, hello. Welcome back. Moon Griffon Show. Robert Travis Scott heads up PAR, and you go to PARLouisiana.org, and you can, everything he's talking about the 6 amendments, which are on the ballot starting tomorrow, go read. They'll tell you what voting for and against means, and you can read them for yourself. All right, Robert, amendment number 3.
Well, this is a rather minor thing, doesn't come up very often, but basically, amendment number 3 would allow one local government entity to share equipment and personnel to another local entity. It's like a parish could help out a parish or a city could help out a parish.
Is that simple?
It's really that simple, and really you can do it now. It's just that the concern is that if you gave loan a bulldozer to a fire department and they didn't give you compensation for the correct value of that, then some people think that would violate the Constitution. There's a real question whether that's even true, but basically this just makes it easier for the parishes to share stuff. So,
yeah, you kind of wonder what could go wrong with that. But I just started thinking.
Well, there's supposed to be written agreements. We'll see what goes on with that. But
I was just thinking, Robert, if I'm next to you and I don't like you and you need something that might help you maybe win re-election because you got a little project you need to do, and I say nope.
Yeah, man, you're none of this is out of the question. That's exactly right. So. It's a healthy skepticism, man.
I understand. All right, that's 3. Let's go to 4.
Well, this one is about the State Transportation Trust Fund, and that's basically where all the fuel tax goes, right? And we're supposed to build roads with it and help out our ports and other things. And what's happened for years is they're also allowed to use the money for state police and traffic control purposes.
Yep, correct.
And so there's been this question about what that really means. And since this fund was created back in 1990, we've transferred $700 million to state police for this purpose. And a lot of people have said, no, that's not what the purpose of the gas tax is. It's you've been paying too much for it. We want to stop this, and the only way to stop it is to go to the Constitution and stop it. As a matter of fact, the current legislature and governor have stopped doing it just in the last couple of years.
Well, we need
to put it in the Constitution.
Yeah, we need the money to go to roads. Okay.
That's basically it.
Amendment number 5, which has to do with special property tax treatment.
Yeah, some people have a trust where they put their home into a trust and they can live in it and then, pass it on to, their grandchildren or whoever once they pass away. And what this amendment does is it says there are all these various tax exemptions that you can get for special circumstances in Louisiana, and that if you have a trust, you're eligible for those. You're already eligible for the homestead exemption, with the trust. But this would just help you do that. This affects very, very few people.
All right. And number 5, phase in property tax increases.
Number 6.
Number 6.
Last one on there, and if you get hit with a huge property tax assessment where your assessment goes up by 50% or more, what this amendment would do is it would say, hey, wait a minute, we're not going to calculate your tax at the full amount. We're going to phase in the calculation of your tax over 4 years so you don't get a super big hit. So basically it eases the crunch if you get a giant property tax increase by your assessor. Now, if you get 40% increase, you're out of luck. You're paying the
but let me stop you real quick on that. The assessor can't raise that kind of tax on you, can they? 40, 50%?
What's that?
Assessor can't just raise a property tax on you like that 40, 50%.
Well, the assessor doesn't actually raise.
That's correct.
What the assessor does is they just assess the value of your home. And so, and then the tax collector, who's usually your sheriff in Louisiana, quite often the sheriff, they come in and they say, well, here's the millage that we're supposed to apply to that assessment, and here's your tax bill. Please pay it. And that's the way the system works. Under this constitutional amendment, the assessor's job doesn't change. I mean, they assess what they're doing, and if for some reason your neighborhood is exploding in values and your property value goes up over 50%, this only applies, by the way, to homestead exemption primary homes. So, but what we found in this is that the ballot language didn't quite match what the bill said. And if you read our guide, we kind of try to explain that because I think people might be confused reading the ballot language about what this actually does.
Okay. All right, Robert, you got it right in the limit, brother.
All right. Hey, let's come back and talk about sometime this statewide ballot we have. It's not a constitutional music amendment, but for all these fantasy sports contests, we can have a lot of fun talking about that.
Well, that's not up and running yet, is it?
Oh yeah, but it's going to be on every ballot.
Well, no. Let me hold you. Let me hold you then. Let's talk about it right now. Don't go nowhere. Let me take a break. Be back, Robert Travis. I got a couple other questions I could ask you anyway. So we'll hold you another segment. Robert Travis Scott of POR, Louisiana.org, and find out about the amendments. Yeah, I forgot about that one. Come to think of it, we'll be right back. Hi, hello, welcome back, Moon Griffon Show. Great to have you with us. Robert Travis Scott of POR, our special guest. All right, Robert, the proposition, I'll say you're talking about the fantasy sports, authorized fantasy sport contest. Okay, this is a local issue. That's what you just brought up, and I'd be honest with you.
Well, and this is not a constitutional amendment, but everybody in the state will have this on their ballot when they walk in, and they're going to wonder, what am I voting on? And, hey, I saw some commercials in favor of this by the fantasy sports betting outfits that was on during the Saints game yesterday. Mm-hmm. And it's a pretty funny ad. It's got a referee throwing a yellow flag at a guy for, ordering a pizza or something. And saying, we're trying to take away your rights to sports betting. It's that basic. So it's some pretty funny stuff. But basically, this is not about betting directly on games. Okay, that's a different thing, and eventually, like they do in Las Vegas, there may be a change in our state law to, allow our casinos and whatnot to allow betting on that type of sports activity where you're actually betting on the outcome of the games. This is about fantasy sports contests, and in fact, it's called the Louisiana Fantasy Sports Contest Act. Mm-hmm. And it basically would say, hey, everybody's out there drafting players for their fantasy teams, and you know how that works. Are you on a fantasy team?
No, I played it one time when it first came out years ago, and I swore I'd never do it again. Matter of fact, if I'm watching sports and they bring up a tournament as fantasy football, I cut it off. That stuff doesn't do anything for me. I cut it off quick. I don't want to know who's going to get points for scoring a damn touchdown. I don't.
Gee, I wonder where you stand on this one.
I can't stand fantasy football. Matter of fact, fantasy football gets in my way. How about that?
It gets in the way of actually doing well.
It gets in the way of watching something with some intelligence. I'm sorry, that's just me.
I confess that I'm not a fantasy football or baseball or whatever player either, but I have a lot of friends who do. And, you know, there basically a lot of them, there's different ways you can do it. You can bet among yourselves and go on ESPN or Yahoo, and they'll help you, run those games among your own little crowd there. But what this is about like DraftKings or FanDuel. Remember all those ads we used to see? Well, that type of activity where you're betting on a contest is what they like to call it. Others just say, hey, it's just plain gambling, right? Whichever way you interpret it, it's not allowed in Louisiana until this law came along. And this law basically said we're going to let each parish decide whether or not people in that parish are able to engage in this type of fantasy sports betting. Mm-hmm. And so that's what this is about. You're deciding for your parish whether to allow it. But that doesn't mean it's legal quite yet.
I understand.
Still, the Gaming Control Board has to implement rules, and it's not even clear whether the locals are going to tax it or not. And if they did tax it, there might be another vote, maybe later on, that would allow the locals to decide whether to tax the activity. So we may face this on the ballot again in terms of just exactly what its impact would be.
Yeah, I know there was a bill out there that wanted to go to real sports betting. I know they passed it in Mississippi, and I think that's going to come back. Do you think if that ever comes back, and it is going to come back, will that be a local option deal? Because, back in the day when gambling was passed in some places and not, they said we would never have to worry about local option again.
Well, here you go.
I know. That's what they told us.
Who knew there'd be all these different new forms of gambling? And in Louisiana, we've got them all. I mean, we've just about every form there is, except the sports betting. And I think typically what you see with the sports betting is it would come to casinos, and it's just a matter of which casinos and what level you'd allow that to happen. But that's a future issue. The issue in front of you on the ballot is whether or not you want your parish to say it's okay for you to participate in DraftKings and FanDuel on your mobile device or your computer and play that game and potentially win money and, of course, potentially lose a lot of money. Because you pay fees to play those games.
I'm about to say, don't forget the loss part of it. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. All right, my friend, we'll do it again. Thank you so much for sticking around and visiting. We'll get you back on again very soon.
Polls.
Yep, no doubt about it. All right, Robert Travis Scott of PAR. That's PARLouisiana.org. Find out about the 6 Amendments for yourself. You can read it, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Thank you, sir. God bless, brother. We appreciate it. All right, quick break. When we get back, who do we have next?
Josh Guillory.
Josh Guillory running for congressional district. We'll bring in Josh in just a minute. You're listening to the Moon Griffon.